Yeah.
Clark, time is 5:46. I call this meeting to order. The committee acknowledged that the meeting took place on initiative lands that traditional and treaty territory, the Chippewas of Virginia Island, recognizing that many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. Special relationship the Chippewas have with lands and waters in this territory, and that Aurora has shared responsibility for stewardship of these lands and waters. It's noted that Aurora is part of the treaty lands and Mississauga and Chippewas recognized treaty number 13, the Winning Queens of 1923. Shared understanding of how the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Get a motion to approve the agenda. Please, Councilor Thompson, in favor. Opposed, that carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Receipt of minutes, 5.1. Finance Advisory Committee meeting minutes of April 11, 2023. Someone like to move that? Michael, Ron, in favor, opposed, that carries. Delegations, 2 items, 7.1, compensation and support for members of council, policy review and update. Can I first get someone to move the recommendation and then Michael, Ron, comments or questions? Who wants to start? Rachel?
Sure, I'll start. So through you, Mr. Mayor, so that's a request of council. We pulled what was traditionally known as policy 57. We don't typically number our policies like that anymore, but we've given it a bit of a refresh. So there were some older terminology in there, things like Blackberries, which we don't have anymore, and council equipment and things like that. So modernizing it from that perspective. And we also added to this section the piece related to ward budgets, but the types of expenses that would be eligible for the ward budgets, and to make it so that there's a clear understanding with council as to what those expenses could include. So right now we're here seeking feedback from FAC before this policy could then go to GC for their consideration.
Okay.
I'll start. So appreciate the work done on the policy. And the only question I really had, and just chatting with Ms. Council before this, Rachel, really just the amount is not determined within the policy. There's no language around establishing our methodology or mechanism to determine what that fair share amount is. That in our budget discussions, council did talk about it for this year, and I guess, you know, is there any references out there with regards to other municipalities in terms of how they determine the various ward budgets that we can look to as a guideline, or is it fairly limited?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we did do a fair amount of research. It's not a tremendous amount of material out there in that regard. From a policy standpoint, most of them take a similar practice to us, and then they define the budget amounts through their budget process, what the appropriate budget is. In terms of the focus of their policy has typically been on defining what is an eligible expenditure and what's not eligible. And then they define how much money is appropriate based on that. The ones that do have some don't have budgets. So there's a lot of variety out there.
You know, that's fine. I think you just, you know, trying to avoid having that conversation every year where I say they may or may not, agree with the allocated amount. But I do appreciate the fact that you've kind of identified what is eligible and non-eligible expense perspective. So it's good. Will the comment really add?
Yeah, and so that's the whole point, is this just the eligibility, and we're gonna go into a second item here that's kind of similar, but you don't have any numbers,
Yeah, so.
do you?
For you, Mr. Mayor, the policy overall speaks to what the objectives is, so at a very high level. So it talks about what's eligible, what's not eligible. When you start getting into the details of amounts and things like that, you're getting more into process, and we're the best place to do that is either through a report or through the budget process itself, or if there's any direction from council or committee that we want to take on it too.
Okay. So through you, Mr. Mayor, what you're really looking for here is that this question, what would be an appropriate value for the budget and should a dedicated be for eligible? And I noticed in the next one, you're going to talk about the eligibility criteria in that. So this is just almost perfunctory to say, yes, go ahead and take a look at this and come back with a report.
So our plan would be, if FAC, whatever comments we get from FAC, we would go ahead first with the policy, because we want to make sure that we understand what council agrees on is eligible under these types of expenses. After that, we can do some more analysis, see if we can maybe cast a wider net, or even look at some historical information we have to try and estimate what an amount could be, or make some recommendations. But then that does come down to a bit of a budget discussion too.
Right. Okay, no, that's fine. I get it.
Those in favor? Opposed, that carries. 7.2. No. Someone to move the recommendation. Michael, Ron, Rachel, did you want to start?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we are in the midst of actually cutting over right now to a new financial system. So we're in the midst of actually setting up the new system, getting the production system up and running. We are planning to go live at the end of this month in Oracle for most of the system's functionality. There is more work to be done in the property tax and utility billing area, but that work is continuing on, and we're looking at cutting over to that in mid to late June after the property tax bills go out. So it's just not quite ready yet. So we're going to wait until the bills go out. We know that the bills will be good, and then look at doing that cut over. And then we have 6 months before the next set of property bills will go out. We're actually really excited, a little bit exhausted with this project. We're fully involved in training right now. So staff across the corporation receiving training and expenses, payables, procurement. And then we're also looking at kicking off our budget next month in this new system too, which is going to provide us a lot more capabilities that we have now. Now, understanding we are moving forward, we're going to see, a bit of a learning curve as we move into the new system. And it's also going to be a bit of a learning over the next couple of years, because even though what we're implementing now is the first part of it, it's expanding and building upon that once we get things up and running more smoothly. So we're really excited about this.
Where is Vigilant used besides us now? Like you've always had references from other municipalities that have used this successfully in the onboarding and all the rest of it through you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So Vigilant is the lead consultant. We're also working with Ravic as well. So they're on the property tax and utility billing side of it.
Okay.
And they've dealt with some other municipalities out west in Saskatchewan and British Columbia. Vigilant has worked with some other government agencies. So was it the Calgary Airport? Calgary Airport. Yeah, it was one of the bigger ones that they've worked with. And then they've done other work in private sector as well. So.
And through you again, it says post go live support. You said it for a month. Do you think that's going to be sufficient? My experience with these is they're really not that clean. And are we going to pay for more support after that 1 month, or how is that structured through you, Mayor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So after we go live, The first month is that stabilization phase. So as we're getting into the system, making sure everything is working as expected. During this whole process on our team, there's been people that have been learning how to use the system, how the configuration works. So some of the responsibilities and the maintenance will actually be in-house with our own staff. And then there's also the ongoing relationship that we have with Ravik with their team, and that was included in the initial contract that we have with them too.
Great, thank you.
So I think it's great. I certainly share in the excitement. I think that, in my experience, I've seen a few rollouts with SAP and Oracle. And as Ron alluded to, they can be challenging. So I would emphasize as much testing as possible before going live. You try and break the system as best you can in a sense, because I'd rather discover some of these bugs and be able to address them before we go live. Doug, in your prior experience, all about software and issues like that. But yeah, if it means delaying going live by a week or two to be able to thoroughly test, personally, I would be okay with it. I know there's a domino associated with it, but just it's all I have to say. I think it's great, but just test the heck out of it if you can, because we've seen and heard horror stories of going live, and then all of a sudden something occurs and it becomes a real mess. So just try and do as much as you can. There's no guarantees, I get it, but that's my only piece of advice.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, for the testing, we have been very intensively testing things. And much to the surprise of our consultant, we're testing more than what any of their other clients have, and we're very detailed in our approach.
Great.
Especially because one of the things is we were really prepared for some of the areas, particularly the procure to pay process. Like that's one of the big cruxes of the overall system, and making sure that that whole process runs smoothly. But we have very defined processes. We have a very defined bylaws. We're able to actually implement that and put it into the system and make sure that our workflow works. And the team has been working very diligently. That the consultant may have said, oh, you need to test this for 2 days. We might be testing it for 3 weeks. And we've gone through multiple rounds of testing. So
Great to hear.
Yeah.
Great.
All those in favor? Opposed, that carries. New business?
No,
Motion to adjourn.
I'll think about it in 5 minutes.
Michael, Ron, all those in favor? Opposed, that carries. We're adjourned.
Thanks. Lisa.
Somebody for FAC.
Pardon?
If you have anything that, related to FAC,